Okay, we are live. Hello, everyone. Sorry for the late start on this one. We're about 15 or so minutes late. We're doing other stuff, but we're on it now. Welcome to the Cinema Savvy Movie Podcast. I'm Chris Garner, joined with my co-host George Aldridge. Unfortunately, again, Tate is still in Italy. He comes back tomorrow, and he begged and pleaded for us to do this tomorrow. But on the flip side, you wouldn't be able to do it tomorrow, George. So, we had to pick and choose, and I know how much you like Ramsay, so we had to get you in on this one. This is episode 9, Battle of the Bastards. This is the episode that any Game of Thrones fan looks forward to. Episode 9 is always the one where the most stuff happens, the most epic stuff, and oh boy, if this isn't my favourite episode of Game of Thrones ever made so far, I don't know what is. This was absolutely incredible, fantastic TV to watch, and so much so that it was almost like watching a movie. For anyone who hasn't joined these before, these are incredibly spoiler heavy. We are going to go through the entire episode, talk it to death, and speculate for what's to come as well. So if you haven't seen the episode yet, giving away no spoilers, watch it first, come back to us, and you can watch our conversation. So usually how we do these, when there's a lot more characters to talk about, we split it geographically. So we talk about the northernmost stuff and work our way to the south. But all the interesting stuff today is more or less happening in the north. We're going to save that till last. So we're going to hit Daenerys first. George, where do you want to start with this thing? Because there was a lot happening with the Daenerys stuff, actually.
Yeah, and I didn't expect it because I was watching it, and I think I messaged all of you a lot saying, wait, I was like, it's not set in the north? Like, just because we thought it would be like Blackwater, it would be like the other battle ones where it's one episode in one location. But you actually had a low-key but a very important battle with Daenerys. And it kind of just happened out of nowhere where suddenly all the dragons are loose, killing boats, all the Dothraki have turned up. It was really cool, though, I won't lie. It was a cool scene. And the CGI is incredible. And the Masters, basically she got the boats. For something so big, it happened so quickly. But I can understand why in terms of what they've got to do for the rest of the season. But it was a really cool. I call it more of a montage scene, but it was almost where they're kind of finishing off for this season. But they've set the foundations now for next season. And I'll let you talk about it first because I've got one massive prediction to make.
Yeah, we got so much Daenerys this episode, and it was such awesome stuff that I don't actually think we're going to get her in the next episode. I didn't see her in the preview for next episode. We might get like one little scene just setting up where she's going to. But they pretty much set that up in this one. A lot of stuff happens with her. So you're right. You sent me the message and you let me know that there were other characters. I didn't know that it was just Daenerys. I was expecting like a broad sense of it. And this episode was 10 minutes longer as well, I think, wasn't it? And the next one is as well.
It was it was between. Yeah, because I had a very long night and I had to sandwich Game of Thrones between wrestling. And it was perfect 57 minutes past it stopped. I was so happy.
But the opening scene of this thing sort of picks up right where the last one left off with the siege on Marine. You get all these big sweeping shots of catapults and flaming, just catapult, everything like that. And I was just transported right back to Lord of the Rings. Fantasy is my favorite genre, and I don't think anything ever has and ever will top Lord of the Rings in terms of battles and just everything. But my God, this came close. I was taken right back to those feels of seeing that on the big screen. For a TV show, I know it's a massive budget TV show, and you can tell they just saved all their budget for the White Walker stuff earlier on in the series and this. The CGI was completely on point. Usually some TV shows you can tell it's TV CGI. This looks like it's good enough to go on a big screen. And we were chatting about this before we started recording. We think that they're definitely gearing up for a Game of Thrones film to finish it off with. And if this is what the results are going to look like, I'm totally for that. I think they were maybe testing the waters with this one. And you were talking about the dragons released. It was a bit weird because the two that were still imprisoned, I know they were unchained, but in this they just kind of break out on their own. I'm like, why didn't they do that before? Maybe you could argue they were waiting for Daenerys to come back or Drogon or something like that. That was kind of weird for me. And we get Daenerys on the dragons again. Well, the first time we've seen this happen was in last series, I think, episode 9, in the Gladiator Pit, where she first got on it. Looked a little shaky there. They have definitely ironed this out, and it was like Smaug from The Hobbit, just flying around, burning boats to the ground. But I was kind of sitting there like, Daenerys, you do realise that you kind of need these ships. What are you burning them all down for? But then later on, she says that she only burnt a few, and she'll take the ships from them. So that was cool. It's very difficult to know what else to talk about with this, because it was just, that scene was cool, that scene was cool. What they did with the CGI was incredible.
Yeah, I was going to make a big prediction. We're moving to the Yara stuff now. The magic transporter has returned once more to Series 6, where everyone's getting everywhere within an hour or two. Cutting to the end of the convo first, I think episode 9 of season 7, or if it's going to be 7 episodes, episode 6 of season 7 is going to be Daenerys' siege of King's Landing. I can see that happening now, especially as the foundations are set, because you're right, this episode, it looked like the end of that arc, but I just saw a promo for next episode and Tyrion's in it. Whether or not we see Daenerys,
point.
But
yeah,
where they've left off is literally get on that boat and you can go to Westeros now. And that's the most we've ever seen it clear. I thought it was a really well done scene of her and Yara. A lot of little nods, oh yeah, there's been as many queens of the Iron Islands as there has of the throne, and there's a little bit of chemistry going on, but I thought it was a well-written conversation. And I liked the little interactions between Tyrion and I can't call him Reek anymore, can I?
Theon.
Yeah. It's always cool to see characters reunite. And,
yeah.
And last time I saw you at the war, it's like you've changed a bit. But it was a really well done scene, I thought. And it's a cool one because I said before that at the start of this season, I did not give a shit about the Greyjoys. But as this season's gone on, I've been really interested in everything that's going to happen. Whether or not they encounter, I always forget his name, Euron,
yeah, that's it.
Finally got it. They might encounter him across the seas and have a Pirates of the Caribbean-esque episode.
More budget, more CGI, more battles. Let's do it.
They're really ramping up to the end of the show now, and you can sense you can sense it from the Daenerys aspect, which means that soon we're going to get the White Walker aspect, and everything's going to meet in the middle. But no, it was a cool scene and a cool setup scene. And I like to see Daenerys like, you won't be like rampaging cities anymore, and you won't be stealing and all this. There'll be an interesting partnership, I think, those two.
Yeah, and I really didn't expect to see Theon in this so early. It's kind of what you just said about how characters just randomly showing up, but when they do that, we don't know how many months and stuff it is between episodes. I mean, Jon and the team could have been recruiting people for months for all we know. We have no idea. But yeah, that was great, and reuniting characters. I don't think we actually see Theon first, do we? And it's Tyrion saying, "The last time I saw you, I was at the wall." I was like,
I was trying to think who.
Yeah, I was thinking like Jon Snow, like, because I know he went to the wall with Jon Snow for a bit, and then he saw Theon. I was like, oh yeah, that's completely right. It was when he was leaving. Again, throwing back to series 1, which this series is really doing a good job with, and just how quick this series has moved. I don't think there's been a single wasted episode. You could go to series 5 and stuff, and there's lots of dragged out scenes and pointless meandering plot lines, but series 6 has really just been full throttle all the way from beginning to end. And it's just not letting up. And series 10 looks like it's going to have a lot. Episode 10 looks like it's going to have a lot of stuff going in it too. One thing I wanted to bring up about Daenerys as well. I've never been a fan of the character. I think that's mostly down to how she's been written for the show and Emilia Clarke's acting. But what I liked, what they did with her in this one, is they are showing that madness starting to creep into her a bit. I mean, it's quickly just disregarded, like Tyrion will shoot her down, give her advice. But I like that when she did go on that spiel at the start, like, I'm going to burn all their cities. I'm just going to, enrage them in fire. And I like that he brings up about the Mad King and says, this is what you could become. And that's sort of how her character is in the books. Like, you get that slow change with her from book 1 to book 5 onwards. And you just see that slow change to her. Like, she's getting a bit more maniacal with stuff. And I like that they brought that into it. I want to talk about that scene as well where Grey Worm kills the two guys. Like, they say that we'll let one of you live. Or what was it? Or we'll kill... No, it was we'll kill one of you, wasn't it? And then they push that guy forward and say, like, oh, he's got nothing to do with us. He doesn't speak for us. Grey Worm just does that awesome dual kill with the knife. That was amazing.
It was so obvious, but it was just so cool to see.
Yeah.
And
Tyrion as well. Like, I was expecting Daenerys to just go on a rant at him and like fire him for what he did with the slavers, but you know, he pretty much shoots it down and says, yeah, we're going to deal with this situation. We're going to come out on top. And they definitely did. They've got a fleet. We get the awesome shot of the Dothraki rocking up too. Just all great stuff, really. The Yara stuff as well. I loved Yara and Daenerys' dynamic. There was a little bit of flirting going on there. You could tell that. And I like that they come to that alliance. And it was great how Daenerys was like, yeah, you can't reave or pillage or rape anymore. And Yara was like, well, this is kind of our way of life. And you can draw comparisons to how the slavers were when they said you've got to abolish slavery right now. But I believe that alliance. I think that they're both in it for their mutual gain. All they want is the Iron Islands. And how it's starting to set up, if Daenerys is queen, I would like them to divvy up parts of the land. So if Yara gets the Iron Islands, that would be cool. Maybe Jon Snow will get Winterfell. If it does happen to be like a happy ending, which with Game of Thrones, you never know, it might all end in tragedy.
I don't think there'll be a north left once the White Walkers down. I don't think Daenerys will last long. We've kind of said this before. I think she will bite the dust. And I don't know if I've made this prediction on here, but he's not my favourite character. I like him, but I really could see Jon Snow on the throne or Sansa. I'll talk a lot more on that later, but Jon Snow is this quiet figure where he doesn't want it, which means you could see him on it. Kind of like Sean Bean, and he's looking more and more like Ned Stark now as well. But that would be, I'll talk more on that later on.
He was a little bit impulsive in the battle, though. We saw that, like they were saying, you need to calm down, you need to be patient. But when Ramsay was pushing his buttons, actually, should we get onto the battle now? I think we've talked about it. Just to tie up with the Daenerys stuff, really like where it's set up. Mention of Euron, and I think you're right. Maybe next season we will get that battle. I'm hungry for more Greyjoy stuff, though. Like, it's been seasons without them. We've finally got them this series, and it's been great, the stuff we've got. But I do want to see more. Maybe they'll appear in the next episode. We don't know, to set up for season 7. But I'm looking forward to all that stuff. Right. Let's get to the part we all want to discuss. Let's talk the battle. So we've got all the preparation stuff before the actual battle. And this is what Game of Thrones does well. And this is what, like, when you go to like the Two Towers, Lord of the Rings, the whole setup for the battle is key, just as the battle itself. And we've seen Game of Thrones do this before, where they'll have fantastic setup. I'm looking at the end of Series 5 here, when Stannis was squaring off against the Boltons. And then, like, the battle happens off screen, or the battle's like 2 seconds long, and it's just an absolute anticlimax. This one had both. It had great build-up. It had a great payoff with the battle. What do you want to talk about then in the setup? Because we got some neat character interactions.
I was really intrigued by the first meeting between Ramsay and Jon Snow, because obviously we know they're two completely different characters, but they've never met. Obviously, Jon Snow knows about Sansa, what's happened with her. He knows he's got Rickon. And it was very clever mind games by Jon Snow, because he kind of said, you know, I wanted to sort of oust him. And the way I saw it was Jon Snow as being very noble. He was the Stark of that conversation. And I thought he was doing it to maybe try and get some of Ramsay's teammates kind of thinking. You know, the North remembers, all that. Yeah. Was thinking is Snow trying to get them to basically turn on him, but they didn't.
That was the Karstarks, wasn't it, who had sided? I thought that was going to happen as well.
But it was a really good scene. I thought, when you go, okay, well, Jon said, you can fight me now if you want. And Ramsay goes, no, and Jon's like, you know, your men know you won't fight for them. Something like that. But I thought it was a really well done scene. It was like, okay, battle tomorrow morning, and I quite like this sort of. Go back to Pirates of the Caribbean again. In the end of how bad the film is, I hate it. There's a really good setup. The setup of the climax, and I like it because I'm guessing, obviously we run around. Obviously, not Pirates of the Caribbean, it's not real, not Game of Thrones, but I'm guessing back then when there were cavalries and stuff like that, you would get the commanders going up against each other with this sort of mutual respect. And I was kind of shocked Ramsay didn't do anything there and then, but it was a very good build-up to the best episode of all time. And I know you spoke about Lord of the Rings earlier, but I was watching this and I thought I think this is better than Helm's Deep.
Oh no, man, I can't go that far. Can't do that to Lord of the Rings. Cannot do it. It was great, don't get me wrong, but
there's a lot of similarities as it progresses.
Yeah.
But I'll go through them later. But just a vague overview of the battle before we go into too much. The cinematography.
Yeah, I wanted to bring that up too.
And everything from the costume designs to the shields to the way that the forces were actually in like a sort of army standpoint. It felt like one of the best battles I've seen in so long, and I can only think of Helm's Deep. I know the Lord of the Rings has a few, but you don't get that anymore. Last Samurai I was thinking of as well.
The one that I want to compare it to, but you haven't seen the movie, the one that it really reminds me of. Braveheart, yeah, because that's all on the field. You've got the cavalry charge in that, and then you've got the really quick, frenetic, hand-to-hand combat when they meet in the middle. Really reminded me of that. Oh boy, this battle, it was just so good. And you're right, like all the episodes we've talked about, I don't know if we've ever brought up cinematography and costume and things like that. We probably should, because every episode looks great, but I think if this goes up in the TV awards, which it absolutely has to, this episode should be the one that gives it a walk away and gives it an Emmy. And like if the show doesn't get an Emmy, this episode deserves it for the construction behind the scenes stuff, because you're right, it did look great. It did make me want to see more battles like this on the big screen. I know I always keep going on rants about CGI, but if you look at sort of how the battles were in Lord of the Rings and you compare them to The Hobbit was very clean. It was a lot of CGI. Nothing felt real. This did have some effect shots, but it was integrated so well. And the shot that comes to mind is where we're kind of going all over the place in this one. I want to go back to Ramsay's introduction in a minute. But the shot where Jon Snow's on the battlefield, and I think it's almost like The Revenant, like a one shot, and you're just following Jon as like horses are coming at them, but then like another horse will take that one out. And you feel like you're there. There's moments where there are some shaky cam scenes, but it makes you feel like you're in that part. And I think that's when shaky cam can be used effectively, is when you get that sense from it. Sometimes it takes away from the action and the staging, especially in action films, and you want to see how it's all playing out. But in this, man, it was so good. It reminded me, the shaky cam stuff as well, of Gladiator, the opening of Gladiator.
Oh, yeah. That's another feel about.
Yeah, it's just everything. You're right, and this needs some recognition for what went into this episode. I don't know who directed this episode, if he's worked on any of Game of Thrones stuff before, any of the battles in this, but it felt like a different director on this one. Felt very different from the likes of Blackwater and the Battle at the Wall and other ones we've seen like that.
Yeah, there's so much to say. I think it was an almost perfect episode of TV. It so has... I mean, everyone's seen this, everyone will know, but it's just some of the shots of when you have the bird's eye shot of the shields surrounding them in the sort of horseshoe shape. And just the little things like that, it was just perfect. And it didn't feel like Game of Thrones. It felt like a film. And I've said this to you guys, because this is a cinematic thing. And this could easily be on the big screen. And budget-wise, this is probably one of the biggest ones they've had in so long.
I reckon they'll put this one on IMAX. You know, I can't remember if it was Series 5 or Series 4.
Sorry, someone just texted me saying, fuck Ramsay, cunt.
Can't say that about Ramsay. Best character.
No, he's a hero. He's the hero that Gotham deserves, not the one. While I've just received that text while I played Sean, I've been threatening to spoil it people. Basically, someone crossed me a year ago, so I told them, wait, and 1 year later I spoiled it. I think I'll text you guys, so I'm going to do it. And yeah. My friend's Facebook account just started spoiling it for him at 4:30 in the morning. And that was glorious. I'll send you some screenshots later. But anyway,
if he gets you back for that, you've got to wait now until the final episode of all time of Game of Thrones. Then you've got to spring it. That'll be epic if you do that.
The only thing that hasn't blocked off his Instagram, so I'm going to comment next week's stuff on that. Going back to Ramsay, do we talk about the first death of the episode?
I will quickly talk about the terms that were delivered.
Yeah.
Because we kind of mentioned that a bit, but I didn't really get to talk about it, and then we'll go into the Rickon scene, yeah. So when they square up on the battlefield, you're right, I love that in films where they deliver the terms and things like that, and you know that the battle's going to happen anyway. But I love that Ramsay acknowledges that, yeah, you know, I probably won't be able to beat you in single combat, but I've got a bigger army, so I'm going to stick with that. And it was a really cool back and forth with the mind games. We saw Sansa stepping up as well before that when they're doing all the preparations, and it reminded me of when her mum, Caitlin Stark, was in the tent in series 2, series 3, and she was kind of with her son Rob, and she was delivering and she was like discussing battle strategies there. I thought that was pretty cool. And Tormund and Davos' scene. We don't get enough Davos in this series, and all the Davos scenes that we get are absolutely amazing. And I love that dialogue he had with Tormund. Really, really human moments, and that's what you need in these battle situations. You can have your big battle scenes, but if you don't have your character moments, if you don't have that build up or that sense of tension, it means absolutely nothing. And I think this was just masterfully done. Blackwater did it as well. Blackwater cut away a lot from the battle to Cersei inside, and I thought that worked really well. I think George R. R. Martin wrote that episode for the TV. He's busy writing the book, so he hasn't written anything in this series or the previous season, I don't think, but it felt just awesome. This is completely past the book, so I don't know if this is going to actually appear in the novels, but I'm sort of at the point now where I'm just watching the show for the show. It's gone past most of all the major storylines that happen in the book, and I'm just in it for the ride. And the whole build-up was fantastic. We've probably missed out loads of stuff, but let's get to the bit where things really start kicking off. You could take it away, George, because you messaged me before saying, like, oh my God, just like Ramsay hype, Ramsay's the best. And I didn't know what to expect from it, but I knew he was going to be amazing. This is really where he shows his true colours in the battle.
When he comes into the battle, he's got a rope attached, and I was like, he's dragging Rick on. He's either got all of his hounds, or he's dragging Rick on, and it was a bit of a letdown. Rickon was only walking. He gets the knife out, and you know he's going to cut Rickon free, which he does. And obviously Jon Snow's the other end of the field. We're going to get another Stark reunion, which I actually predicted this one. I think I've predicted this episode perfectly to you and Tate. I want to check. But anyway, and it was like, run to your brother. The second he said that, I was like, here we go. I was so excited. And then he got his bow and arrow, and you know, he misses one. Jon, the intercutting between Jon, the arrow, and Rickon and Ramsay was really good, I thought. Really good editing, another bit of credit for the show for today. And he missed and missed and missed. And the big build-up one, he still missed. I was like, fucking hell, Rickon saved. And just as Jon's hand goes out, it was fucking straight through. Genius editing, not to show
So quick.
And I was there like, you absolute savage. I was like, you fucking hero. And like, I didn't, basically, I saw my sister earlier, and apparently I woke everyone up in the house today screaming. And I said to him, as he goes, I don't know, it was either during Game of Thrones when Rickon died out of excitement, it was either the ending when I was devastated about Ramsay, or it was during wrestling when Seth Rollins won the title back, or 1 minute later when he lost the title to his old best mate. So I had 4 moments last night where I woke up everyone in the house, and I think this was the first one when I was just going absolutely mental. And it was so savage because you've got to look at it in perspective that they haven't seen each other in, what, 5 years? Because I think the show works. The show works like, because it is every year on the show, because obviously they've got to age them, stuff like that. And they are literally arms grasped away when Rickon bites the dust. And then obviously that kickstarts the whole war. I'm good at Sansa wasn't there because I'd have loved to have seen a reaction. But the other thing, I know it's jumping over, when the war starts, I don't think they ever get Rickon's body, unless I missed it. Is that on the stretcher again?
See him on a stretcher, yeah, so someone went and fetched his body.
Where Rickon dies is the middle of the whole battle. So that pyramid of bodies, which I thought was great, because that's very realistic, in all honesty, Rickon should have been at the bottom of that.
Yeah.
I was thinking about that. I don't know if everyone would, but it was an absolute savage moment. And I thought when he was...
They got the body, but... Yeah.
But yeah, I didn't think... I mean, there would have been arrows in it and everything. I thought Ramsay was going to have the whole army unleash the arrows on Rickon. He did it himself, and it's jumping ahead, but I said to you just before we started recording that Ramsay was missing all these shots, but the second he got close to Jon, he got the perfect one, and I think he was doing them on purpose. Because when you get... I know it's cutting way far forward. When the giant dies, Ramsay kind of... You know, him and Jon lock eyes, and then click, there's a bullseye right through the eye, and it's Ramsay. Ramsay clearly knows how to aim. So I think the whole Rickon thing was just him trolling him to get
Him.
John.
Yeah.
Because what Sam said was he's going to lure you out, and obviously that's exactly what he did by telling Rickon to run. And I don't know, but I felt a little bit sad because obviously, you know, there's now officially one Stark. The kids, there's Bran, who everyone hates.
I like Bran. Bran's all right.
I liked Rickon, but he didn't do too much. And I know it sounds bad. It makes sense for his character to die, because I don't see him offering anything for the show.
That's like the biggest trope in like the books and the show. It's like you've got all the Starks and then Rickon, who's the one that no one cares about and everyone kind of neglects. He's just kind of there. I think maybe his death. I mean, it was very well done, like beautiful how it was done. No kind of emotional died in your arms speech or anything like that. It was just so quick, just boom, dead. I think maybe we could have benefited with some of Rickon scenes captured at Winterfell, maybe some dialogue with him and Ramsay, or Ramsay toying with him or something like that, or talking to him in a jail cell, whatever. I think that may have been some nice setup for this episode. That was kind of a whole lot I need to go back on. So so when he brings Rickon out, I'm going to go from there. It reminds me of the film, don't know if you've seen it, Apocalypto, Mel Gibson directed film, set with the Mayans and the Aztecs, things like that. And there's a scene, big focal point of the film, it's where the big chase starts at the end, where they do a similar thing where they cut the prisoners free and they say start running, and they start firing arrows after them. And in that film they start like serpentining and like running away like that, which is how I would run away if I was in that situation. But I never even thought of that when you were saying that Ramsay was just toying with him with the bow and arrows, because he like shoots it and then he misses and he goes like or like something like that. It was like, okay, unlucky with that one, I'll get him with this one. But then when you talked about the giant getting the arrow through the eye, I was like, oh my God, yeah, he probably was waiting just for that right moment until he was as close to Jon as he could be before he killed him. I've got to admit, when he first brought him out on the rope and cut him free and said start running, when they mentioned the hounds, I thought that's where they were going to come into play. I thought he was just going to sick the hounds on him across the field, which would have still been brutal, but I think the arrow works a lot better, especially when you save the hounds for that scene, which we're going to talk about at the end. What else can I talk about? So when the battle actually starts, we get my favorite shot, and it could be very cliched if they'd have done it this way, and I'm glad they didn't. When Jon's riding in front of his army and they're all charging behind him, you could have very easily just kept Jon on his horse all the way to the end, like be this gallant warrior. The fact that the horse just gets taken out straight away and Jon's just sort of like scattered onto the ground, that was great. And that was, you were talking about like favorite shots earlier, like the bird's eye view with the shield and stuff. There's so many in this episode, but if I had to pick my favorite shot and favorite one moment of this episode, it would be, and the soundtrack as well was fantastic in this bit. It's where the cavalry's charging towards Jon on his own in slow motion, and he just draws Longclaw, and it's like him against unfathomable odds, and he's just like charging at them too. That was absolutely incredible. I lived for epic moments like that in fantasy. The one thing I was kind of missing from Ramsay and Jon in this was like an epic battle speech. I think that would have just been the icing on top of the cake if we'd have had some like Aragorn style battle, like Braveheart, William Wallace style battle speech at the start. That would have been great. I'm going to pass it back to you. There's so much to talk about. I'm kind of losing track of everything. I'll agree with you with Sansa as well. It would have been nice to have seen her have a presence at the whole battlefield. But her reveal at the end, I think, still works. Although I do have some questions about that, but we'll get to that later on.
One shout out who I've just remembered is we got cameo of the year, which was Lady Mormont on the horse giving dead looks. It was great. Everything's just flying into my head now. I just remember seeing it, I was like, well, hey, she's back.
Yeah.
I really wanted to square her wits, but she didn't. But no, the battle, the horse scene happens. And going back to what I said about, I thought that maybe the cast would turn on Ramsay was Ramsay's telling them to shoot, killing his own men. And then you've got Sir Davos on the other end saying, hold your fire, you're going to kill our blokes. And the juxtaposition between the two armies was so high. And
that was, again, another bit that reminded me of Braveheart. In Braveheart, the English forces, King Edward the Longshanks goes there and he orders an arrow volley, and his like lieutenant says, excuse me, sir, but won't we hit our own troops as well? He goes, yeah, but we'll hit some of theirs as well. So it kind of reminded me of that strategy when you have like a really evil character.
And I think I just love seeing the clash of personas with them, and so Davos is a man of class. I think he's one of the best characters on the show. We don't see enough of him. I think that's why he works. I'd love to see more of him, but when he's on screen, I think credits Liam Cunningham is that he always is the focus of the attention. He just steals it. And whether it was with him with Stannis or him with Snow or him with Melisandre, even in this episode, he had a great character moment where he's on the rubble where Thingy Bob died and he picked up the
yeah, we can talk about that. Yeah, that was a really nice throwback to that moment.
Beautifully shot scene when you have the sunrise in the background coming out.
And he does that kind of Kylo Ren turn, like the over-the-shoulder turn towards the camera look.
Yeah, and it was just great, and it was just cool seeing him in the war, because I can only really remember him in Blackwater on the boat getting battered by wildfire more than anything. So obviously he helped out 1 or 2, but he wasn't ever a focal point as he was then. But going into this battle, it was just... I'm just trying to remember bits and bobs, but it's just the big bits where they were fighting, and then suddenly they were all clustered together, and there was this genius tactic of squashing them all in to then get dropped there.
That was so good. I love seeing like military tactics like that. My one problem with that is they start with that, and it's like a fantastic strategy, and it's working beautifully. And then it just seemed to stop. Did you notice that? Like they were like making good advance, and then something happened where they were just standing there, and I think it's when the giant starts like knocking a couple of the spears away, but they're not doing anything. I'm like, you're not moving. You carry on. You're going to win with this strategy, and it just stops for a bit. And I think that's where Ramsay sends the Karstarks in, like over the top of the body period, and that was the moment where I thought that they were going to turn, and side with Jon against Ramsay. I thought if that was a place where you were going to do it, that would probably be the place to do it. I don't know whether it's a good thing or a bad thing that they didn't do that. I guess it was a red herring at the start of the episode, bringing that up. But that was cool, and especially the bit where Jon Snow gets like trapped underneath all the bodies.
And well, this is what I was crapping myself, because I thought Tormund was going to die.
Yeah, so did I.
With him fighting the Karstark. And Jon
gets battered, isn't he? He's getting like head butted, and
it was Jon suffocating under all the bodies. Like, shit, Tormund's gonna go, and I was bricking it because he's one of the best characters. Even at a character moment where he didn't know like what a trench was or whatever it was.
It was a pincer move, wasn't it?
Yeah, and then did he bite the throat out of the Karstark or something?
Yeah, I thought he ripped his ear off at the start, but then he like clutches his throat and all blood's coming through it, so he ripped his throat out.
And then he's like stabbing him in the face, and like Tormund will live. And if he'd have died, I don't know what I would have done. Because I thought, jumping ahead again, I thought it was obvious the giant was going to die. He has a name, but I always forget it.
I don't know if they changed the name from the book. He's got a very, very long-winded name in the book. It's like One Where Wugdar One or something like that. Loads of 3-letter names. I think they call him One. I don't know if that was the equivalent of the character in this, but it was a bit of a shame that we only had one giant. But did they say he was the last of the giants? Or
they killed the other 2, was it? Season 4? Was it season 4?
I think in the book there's still quite a lot left. Or there's a deep
ones that joined up with the wildlings. The free folk, sorry. But I thought him or Tormund had to die, or to Davos. I thought one of those 2 would go, and the giant's the easier choice because he hasn't developed as well, and it kind of makes it a bit unfair for future battles, stuff like that, having a giant lead team.
Do you think the episode would have benefited from one of those deaths, like if Tormund had have gone in that moment? Add a little bit more tragedy into it. I know we had Rickon dying and stuff like that, but do you think actually in the heart of the battle it would have been a bit more emotional if Tormund had gone?
It would have been more emotional, but they would have passed it. I mean, with Rickon's death, I know they come back to the end, but they have to glide past it to start a war.
Yeah.
I think Tormund deserves better than that. I know Rickon's a Stark, but Tormund is the integral figure, and to me, he is the head of the wildlings, although Snow is. He is one. And I think he's got a lot more to offer the show, more than just some great gifts with Brennan Tarth. But it would have been devastating for him to go because he's just brilliant from the first episode of him hating Snow and the respect and everything like that. It would have been very sad if he had gone. But the credits to the giant, when I make these Helm's Deep comparisons, when you had the giant charging at Winterfell, I know this is cutting really far ahead again. More Helm's Deep comparisons. I think Tom shared something on Facebook, and it was the Helm's Deep bit of when Gandalf appears on the white horse.
Right down the mountain.
Yeah, and Tom has shared a picture of Littlefinger and is it Robin?
Yeah, yeah.
And Tom showed that the other day, and from there I thought, okay, that's actually going to happen now, and it did.
I think it was pretty obviously set up, wasn't it, when you look back?
It was a cool moment, and it kind of had to happen. But this is where the Helm's Deep comparisons come from. Then the giant kind of suicide bombed himself through the Winterfell gates, a lot like the classic.
It's the berserker thing with the Olympic flaming torch.
That's one of my favourite moments ever. Just that super slow mo. But I love the fact that do they always say that Winterfell you can't break into it, stuff like that. It's had a reputation, hasn't it, or something like that?
Yeah, well, I think the Vale is the one that has the biggest reputation. It's like it's impregnable. But they do say that Winterfell can withstand a hell of a siege if it needs to. Because they say in this episode, I think, like, all Ramsay's got to do is like take his men behind that wall and wait it out because no one's going to get into it.
And then the fucking giant just rips the doors down.
Yeah, that was so cool. I think it was, and then just how he's getting peppered with arrows as well. You were talking about earlier, I'm just really, really quickly going back to Rickon's dead body. When you said like it'd be filled with arrows and stuff, he did get filled with arrows because I think it's that epic shot. There's so many epic shots in this, but it's where Ramsay's forces loose their arrows and it like the camera follows the arrows up through the air and down into the ground, and you just see Rickon just getting peppered with like hundreds of arrows into the ground. It's absolutely brutal. And the same with the giant as well. We all know the giant was going to go. I was looking at some like not forums but like groups on Facebook of Game of Thrones, and it was like if one dies we riot. And I was like, it's going to happen. You can tell it's going to happen. They'll save on their budget now, so they won't have to keep making giants for a change. But I mean, I think if you're going to kill off the giant, this was the right episode to do it in. And he went out like a badass as well, so that's cool.
Yeah, and it was cool, and there was that little moment where him and Jon they lock eyes and
it's cut short again. I love that. Like Ramsay loves that. Like you just expected like an emotional farewell, and it's just boom, arrow through the eye, dead.
And it was just Ramsay there. Like this is where it hit me. Goes shit. He's known the whole time. It was a great moment because Ramsay knew he was fucked. And I can't. They didn't have I know they didn't have a fight because you knew it was going to be one-sided. Ramsay knew, but when he was shooting the arrows at Jon, and I always love it when they put shields up. They do it in 300 when they withstand arrows and they keep charging, and then he just smacked him in the face. And it was the ground assault, and I've seen that in so many films. And I think I predicted this to you and Tate, where I think I've always said Jon won't kill Ramsay.
Sansa will, yeah.
And I've said that, and that's exactly what happened. I know that's kind of jumping ahead again, but Jon's there on the edge. He looks up at Sansa, and he probably thinks, he's been like a bad brother or something. Or that really cool moment of when the Stark banners come back down. They've been at Winterfell since season 2. That was kind of cool to see again. And then jumping even further ahead, the final scene. But if you've got more to say, because I've kind of
I want to go very quickly back before the Jon Snow and Ramsay fight. I want to talk about Littlefinger. Got to give a shout out to my boy Littlefinger, Peter Baelish. He's my favourite character in the show. I had 3 main characters. Sadly, I've had to say goodbye to 2. We had Joffrey, who bowed out in Series 4. We've had Ramsay, who sadly bit the dust in this episode. He will be missed. Now I've just got Peter Baelish, and I'm just like putting all my chips onto his victory now. He was great, and I really wish he'd have got some dialogue in this. We get that cool shot of where they all charge in. Reminded me of the cavalry charge from the end of Blackwater, where Tywin rides in with the Tyrell forces. And this is what I was going to bring up, actually, about Sansa. So Sansa's not actually there during the battle, is she? She's there during the prep stage, and then she's just kind of not on the battlefield. We know that she sent the Raven to Littlefinger in the last episode. I know they didn't specifically say that in this episode, but it was heavily hinted, and I think someone on the internet took that image, that screenshot, blew it up, sharpened it up, and saw that it was addressed to Peter Baelish. Did she, ride to the Vale?
I was wondering, I thought she would have been at the battle still, just on the sidelines. But in that one day, she either went to a tent for a bit of sleep and woke up to like Peter Baelish being there, or she jogged there for a day and come back.
Yeah, because it wasn't clear how it was shot. So the shot is that the cavalry rides in, and then the camera like pans slowly to the left, and we see Sansa there with a smirk on her face and Littlefinger's right next to her. So either she was there, Littlefinger showed up and just like parked his horse next to her, or she rode off to the Vale to get Littlefinger to then bring him back. But the Vale, I haven't got a map of Westeros, but I know that the Vale is fucking ages away. Miles and miles, hundreds of miles away from the wall. Well, not the wall, sorry, Winterfell. She wouldn't have made it. She would not have made it in that time, especially in the time frame we've seen the battle. So I don't know. Maybe she was at the side of the battle. I really don't know how that worked out, but that was kind of weird for me. But I don't care because just seeing Littlefinger again, and we really, really haven't had much of him this series. Been really depressed about that fact. I think this was his second episode we've seen him in, possibly third. He really hasn't had all that much to do. I'm hoping he gets some screen time in next episode. And it looks like it from the preview. We're getting a bit with him. Okay, now I'll go to the Jon Snow and Ramsay fight.
Okay. You know the part text me about Ramsay?
Yeah.
Ramsay's a grade A cunt. I'll sit at the cunt's throat and watch the dust come out, for real.
See, everyone hates him. I love all the absolute bastard characters. I really do. They're just so it's like a pantomime bad guy, you know.
They add dynamics to the show. It's about a villain. There's nothing. It's boredom.
Yeah, and he's not played well. He is a completely villainous, despicable bastard, but he's done in such a comedic way that he's just so much fun to watch. And I can't remember the name of the actor who plays him.
Iron Rowan.
Yeah, that's it. He's a great actor, and you can tell that every scene he was playing Ramsay, he was just having a whale of a time playing this character.
Watch, if no one's seen it, the Americans wouldn't. There's a show called Misfits, which is Chris Dad. Watch that. It's a really good show. And he's a really quiet, shy, little nice guy. And then I remember seeing him again in Friends. I was like, holy shit, Simon's made it.
He's in a comedy series as well, isn't he? I don't know if it's on the TV now. It was on fairly recently. And it's just so surreal seeing him play like a nice character. I bet he's like a really like genuinely nice bloke in interviews and stuff. But when you see him in roles, it's like the Joffrey effect. The actor who played Joffrey, he's like the nicest guy. And then he was getting death threats and stuff just from playing the character in the show. If you're getting them, then you can tell you're doing a good job with your character and your acting skills. So we get to this one-on-one battle with Jon Snow and Ramsay. It's what we've all been waiting for. And I have to admit, this was stupid of me because usually I'm good with predicting this. I completely forgot about... Because I predicted as well that Sansa would be the one to kill him, but just how hard Jon Snow was punching him into the ground and like the bloody face and like broken teeth and stuff, I was like, oh shit, he's just... You know, that's it. That's over. I was kind of shouting at the screen, like, why Ramsay? Why are you using a bow and arrow in close quarters combat? Like, grab a sword. Like, I know you're not going to be a better swordsman than Jon Snow, but at least try. I guess a bow and arrow is just his weapon of choice. And then I thought it was over right there, and I was like, wow, Game of Thrones, you're at it again. You have all this fantastic build-up, and then you just have a shit payoff. And then I thought, well, no, come on. There's got to be more to it than that. They can't leave it on that. And then we get the scene where he wakes up in the chair and Sansa's there. And I was seeing like the metal bars and stuff. And I'm like, that doesn't look like a regular prison. That looks like a kennel. And Sansa did let the dogs out. I know that's like going to be the cliched line now. And actually went to that song earlier on YouTube, put it on my Facebook and said, like, I think this is appropriate for today. And the amount of comments, the recent comments in that, of all people that have just watched Game of Thrones and gone to that song, it was kind of hilarious. But yeah, I'm going to let you talk about this one because this was savage, as you would say. It was brutal. It was poetic. And I think it was the perfect end for Ramsay to have in this whole series.
I don't like the fact he, like Stannis, we've had another hero taken from us off screen. Granted, we actually hear this one.
Yeah, that's. I'm kind of going to let this one slide because you do hear the sound effects. And I think that the violence is better when you don't see it.
On the dogs it is, yeah. It's very fitting, and you're right, it is very poetic. It's just a shame that they I mean, it was always going to happen, but it's the fact that they finally did it. But at least him going is going to spare on the character development for Sansa, whereas I don't think anyone's built off Joffrey's death. I mean, you got the court case of Tyrion, but that wasn't Tyrion himself building off it. Whereas Sansa's going to build off this. You know, you're no one. You're going to be nothing. You're not even going to be a memory. Blah blah blah. Because he is the heir to House Bolton. He has killed the other born, the other mother, his father. So that house is now officially extinct. Interesting to happen to all the people, but as far as the death scene, it was a great speech, and I actually thought that he was going to be fed to Ghost, who is still alive, I presume.
That's a good point. Where the fuck is Ghost? I can't keep track of these direwolves. They're there 1 second and then they're gone, but the budget can't afford it.
Ghost, because obviously they only had one hound come out,
and
there's a lot of hungry hounds. So
I thought we saw a few, didn't we?
Huh?
Did we see a few? I thought we saw a few. Like one gets up like onto his lap and by his face, but I thought a few walked
slowly letting them out. But surely they were hungry. They'd have gone for her for being in the same room anyway. But I'm not getting into little things like that because that's just like nitpicky. But
I like the idea of Ghost being involved, but I think they did that because Ghost is a part of Jon Snow.
Yeah,
and they wanted to do it where it was his own. Yeah, you know, his own hands doing it.
Unfortunately, I've seen The Dark Knight enough times. I'm already etched of the Joker's career skills. Let's see how loyal a hungry dog really is.
Oh yeah.
The Dark Knight, I think, would have warmed to it more, but all I could think of was just having the Joker turn up and say it instead. But it was a fitting end, and the fact that the credits rolled with him dying and stuff like that. And Game of Thrones no longer has a bastard except Tommen.
So who have we got to love to hate now? We've got Littlefinger, and the Hounds turn good, kind of.
The Mountain's gone boring. Cersei's gone boring. Jaime's boring. Tommen, I just despise. I don't even love to hate him.
Yeah, he's not even likable, is he? You can't even like him in that way, like a Joffrey way. Yeah.
Our last remaining savior is no one. No, because no one's actually a thing in Game of Thrones. I meant the time that there is genuinely no one that we can like. But no, I hope that they introduce a new villain, a bastard, or something like that, because Joffrey and Ramsay were the two best villains the show's had, two of the best villains I've ever seen on TV. And we deserve more. But Littlefinger's going to be... That'll be a sad day. But I've got high hopes for him in the Iron Throne.
Now, actually, we should talk a bit about Littlefinger. Do you think it was part of his plan that he shows up just at that time when most of the forces have dispatched themselves? I don't know how many numbers are left, but that last shot where they're in Winterfell, it really doesn't look like there's a lot of Stark guys left. Really doesn't. So I'm wondering if that was part of his plan. I thought maybe we were going to get a shock of an ending where he was going to show up at the end and then he was going to say, yeah, I'm taking Winterfell for myself, and then he was just going to start wasting them. That would have been really cool, but maybe he's got a plan. With Littlefinger, I've got to have faith in my boy. Got to have faith in him. He's always going to have a plan. I know he's going to come through strong in the next season. This was a mild setback, I think, but now he's got sort of favour with Jon Snow. I think he's going to make a big claim for power in some way. So, yeah, I loved Sansa's... I'm just sort of picking random bits there in my head because there's so much stuff happening in this episode, even though it was more or less at one or two locations. I love Sansa's walk away at the very end, right before the credits, and we get that smirk on her face. I think it really shows that change to a character, and it's the change in a character we should have seen in Series 5, or they should have cut that big dramatic reveal out from the end of 4, which I think may have smoothed out the transition we keep talking about, where it was like Darth Sansa at the end of Series 4. Before we wrap up, because we've done well, we've covered everything. Is there any other little bits of scenes you can remember that we haven't talked about that you want to talk about?
I think that's everything. It's quite a big, small episode, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. For me, I'm just remembering the scene where Davos is talking to Tormund, and Davos is saying, I put all my faith into Stannis. And then on the flip side, Tormund says, well, I put my faith into Mance Rayder, and they weren't the right guys. I thought that was a really cool flip of the coin. We talk about that Ramsay on the one side with Jon on the other, but I thought that was kind of a neat little comparison as well. We do get a Melisandre scene because we haven't seen her in quite a while, and she's still kind of having a crisis of faith. You can tell that she's not. And the fact that she didn't go to the military council as well when, in Series 2, when Stannis is introduced, she's right at his side talking about the battle plans, and Davos said, she's got no place here. We've really seen that change with Melisandre, and I like that. I don't know whether they're ever going to bring up the fact that she's like a 200-year-old woman. That was really weird. Now we look back at episode 1. I think that's just like a bit of character detail, which they just expect us to know, perhaps. So based on the preview for next episode, next week is the season finale. It's amazing how quick Game of Thrones goes. And then we've got to wait another year for perhaps just half of a season, so even less than this. Looks pretty decent. What are your hopes for the next episode? And then we'll round out after that.
Something needs to happen with Marjorie. Obviously, she's playing games. The big drawing point of next episode is going to be that there's the outside chance that Tate mentioned. Well, it's called the Winds of Winter, isn't it? So
yeah,
I'm still on course that Castle Black's going to get absolutely wrecked in the last few minutes. I want it. It's such a shame because I'm just gutted it's going away for another year. This year's I think been the best season. I can happily after tonight I can say that. I used to always toss up between 3 and 4, but I think 6 has sealed it. Sealed the deal. That this could be the season. This could be the episode 9 of the seasons. If that makes sense, that season 6 could be their equivalent of the episode 9. Granted, who knows? Next season might be even more mental. But it's. I just want it to have a good ending and not have too many. I mean, there's going to be a lot of questions and stuff, but as long as there's not a load of crappy cliffhangers, just put the end to story arcs, put the Cersei story to bed, or at least do something interesting with that. But the Bran stuff, we're going to find out about Jon Snow's parentage because Bran's in it next week. You know, I hated the tease of that across seasons. I don't know. I just want it to be good.
I think there was a very good reason that this particular episode only focused on Daenerys and Jon. There's a lot of theories in the book, and the actual series of books is called A Song of Ice and Fire. Jon being the ice, Daenerys being the fire, potentially, and I think that was planned. I think that you could have just done this episode with Jon, but I think there's a thematic reason here, and I'm sure if Tate was here, he'd be watching all these after shows and all these theories and reading all these Reddit posts and stuff, and he'd go much more in depth into that. But I do think that was done for a reason in this episode. Next episode for me, it's focusing on the trial of Cersei and Loras, I guess, as well, and Marjorie too. Looks really, really good. Usually episode 10 kind of pales in comparison to 9, and I think it absolutely will, don't get me wrong, but I think there's going to be a lot of interesting character stuff in next episode. A slightly longer episode as well, so I think it's going to devote more time to character because there is a lot of characters they need to tie up going into the next series. And I'm going to predict one of the last shots. So the episode's called The Winds of Winter, which is going to be which is the title of the upcoming book, Book 6, which hasn't come out yet and probably won't for another few years. I'm going to be an old man before that book comes out. And the very last shot of the latest book that came out is that Kevin goes to the window and he sees a white raven flying out the window, and he says that winter has come or something to that effect. And based on the preview, we get sort of an overhead shot of a white bird flying across the landscape. So I think that might be the final shot of the episode, or maybe that will continue on as it flies past the wall if it is indeed going to end with the White Walkers breaking past the wall. I think it needs to end on a big dramatic thing, and especially with the White Walkers, how they've set that up and the impending doom of them. I think that would be a pretty good place to end the series. But I think we've talked to death about this episode. I think we've covered pretty much everything. Man, this episode was just fantastic. One of the best pieces of TV I've ever seen in my life. This deserves some awards. So that'll do it for our Game of Thrones discussion show. Be sure to comment, subscribe, let us know what you thought of it. Was it your favourite episode? Is Season 6 your favourite? Anything Game of Thrones related, please do drop us a comment. We will be back next week, either on Monday or Tuesday. We'll let you know on our Twitter or Facebook page about that. Links to those will be in the description below. In terms of what's coming up, I believe this week is Independence Day Resurgence, so I will be at that. I'm not sure if you or Tate are going to be at that one. We'll get a review out for that. Tomorrow I am jumping on 2 more reactions. We've got The Legend of Tarzan and a new what is it? The Tim Burton one, House of Peculiar Children, whatever it's called. There's a new trailer for that, so I'll be doing reactions to those. And also next week on Sunday is, this Sunday coming up is our 3rd episode of Timestamp Zero. I have checked the results today. It's neck and neck. So please do get your votes in for that. We all sit down, we watch the movie, we do a commentary on it based on the film that you vote for. There's some great choices on there. I'm biased because I picked them this time. So it's neck and neck. So please do give us a walk-away winner on that one. So that'll do it for our video today. Lots more to come. Please do hit that subscribe button. And until the next video, we will see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.